These two brothers were experienced fishers and thought they could fish quietly. They hadn't spoken to each other in a while and thought their love for fishing was the perfect opportunity to bring them together and reconnect. What they didn't know was that their fishing trip would soon turn into a nightmare. Because what the brothers didn't realize was that they weren't alone. Something was spying on them from within the tall grass beside them. So the sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon as brothers Justin and Derek arrived at the nature reserve. It had been years since they had gone fishing together, and they were both looking forward to spending the day catching up on old times. So they did everything together as children, but adult life gives you less time for brotherly activities. So they found a nice spot near the marsh where they set up camp. The brothers were licensed and experienced fishermen, which allowed them to fish in such a beautiful nature reserve. As long as they threw back every fish they caught, no harm would be done to the ecosystem. So the morning was calm and peaceful, with the occasional bird song in the distance. A perfect day for fishing, the two brothers said to each other almost simultaneously as they threw out their lines. As the hours passed, the brothers caught 0 fish, but they didn't care much about it. They were just happy to be in each other's company. They shared stories from their separate lives. So Derek was almost ready for retirement and shared his struggles, while Justin told his brother about how he sprained his ankle. So the day was perfect, and they had the time of their lives. But that would soon change, because their happy reunion made them careless. The experienced fishermen usually checked the perimeter where they fished, but they hadn't done it this time due to their enthusiasm, and that would cost them. So because not too far from them in the tall grass sat something watching them, its eyes were fixed on the brothers, observing every move, waiting for the right moment to strike. But the brothers seemed oblivious to the danger lurking nearby. They continued to fish and chat, unaware of the predator watching their every move. The sky darkened as the afternoon wore on and the wind picked up. The brothers decided to stay for 30 more minutes, and after that they would pack up their gear and head back to the car. A decision that would prove to be very unlucky, as they got an indication something was wrong a few minutes later. It was the second indication they got, as the first one was that they hadn't caught a fish all day. But their busy talking kept them from realizing that fact. So they didn't catch anything because something dangerous scared away all the fish. But this time it was something they didn't miss, because the predator decided it was time to move, and that caused the tall grass around him to rustle. The brothers sat silently and enjoyed the last few moments of the day together. It had been very quiet and peaceful until then, but suddenly the tall grass around them began to rustle violently. Derek turned around and looked at what could have caused the movement. "Probably the wind," he said shruggingly, but in fact, there was no wind. The brothers' mistakes kept piling up, getting them into a more and more dangerous situation. Meanwhile, the predator placed itself in the perfect position to strike when the time came. It saw one of the men turn around to try and locate the source of the rustling, but because the predator was already dead silent at its location, the man couldn't see him. It waited patiently for the time to strike, and then that time came. It would have been perfect if pure chance hadn't thrown a spanner in the works. Because as fate would have it, a stranger was nearby who did see the danger lurking near the brothers. He was a bird watcher who followed a trail of rare ivory-billed woodpeckers to this exact location. This man was well equipped for these surroundings and held the tool that made the discovery in his hands. The camera had followed the bird's trajectory perfectly and accidentally crossed paths with the brothers and the danger nearby. When the birdwatcher noticed the two brothers fishing, he was immediately taken in by the beauty of the scene. The sun was setting and gave a nice glow to the sky, while the men sat closely together. This was too nice to ignore, so he took a pause from birdwatching and decided to take a picture of the situation, not knowing this decision would possibly save the lives of the fishermen. A smile appeared on the photographer's face as he clicked the button and got ready to check the result. But then the hairs on his neck stood up and his skin went from a soft pink to a blank pale. There was something his camera captured that he hadn't seen himself. He had to do something. So the birdwatcher dropped everything, including his camera, and rushed down the hill toward the two fishermen. The man ran down and tried to get the brothers' attention. He waved his hands and screamed, trying to warn them of the inevitable danger lurking so close to them. What he didn't know was that when he left his things behind, the camera fell onto the ground and started recording while pointing toward his general direction, not knowing that the footage it would record would greatly influence the future. The peaceful moment of the brother was abruptly and harshly disrupted. The rustling that had stopped seemed to begin again, but that wasn't all. They also heard another distant sound. It was faint at first, but became clearer and clearer. "Someone is yelling," Justin said to his brother as he looked around for the source. "Look," he then said when he pointed toward a weird man running and waving toward them. A mix of confusion and interest filled the air as their attention was fully on the figure running down the hill. Their backs were turned toward the tall grass, another mistake. But then the screams of the man started to make sense. "What is that?" Derek asked while he tried to focus. "Run! Watch out behind you!" The man screamed, and the fear on his face indicated something terrible was behind the brothers. The brothers were frozen on the spot. It was as if the terror of the running man was contagious. The rustling of the tall grass behind them became more prominent. Their hearts throbbed in their throat, and neither dared to turn around. Then the sound suddenly stopped. The screams of the man faded away, and a new sound arose, a low hissing sound followed by a big splash. "Get away now," the man screamed again. The weird combination of hissing and splashing caused the brothers to turn around and take a look. None of them had heard anything like that, or at least they thought. So they heard the warnings of the man behind them, but their curiosity overcame the fear. After all, until this moment, it had been quite a peaceful day. With soft, careful passes, they walked toward the tall grass, adding another mistake to the list. Carefully, the brothers walked along the shore and looked around vigilantly, but could not discover a trace of the creature that had caused the splash. Did they just get scared because of the running man? Is there actually nothing here? So that option became likelier by the second. But then they heard the hissing sound again. They were now just about 10 feet away from the source of the sound. Meanwhile, the birdwatcher was closing in and was well within earshot, but remained at a safe distance. He knew what danger lay in that tall grass and warned the brothers one last time, but it was already too late. So the rustling in the bushes and splashing of the water turned into a visual movement. So the hairs on the back of the brothers' necks stood up, and they felt sweat on their foreheads. A massive creature surfaced in the water and revealed itself. It was a gigantic alligator over 12 feet long. Its mouth was wide open, showing its sharp teeth, and its eyes were fixed on the two brothers while it charged straight at them. Justin and Derek froze for a second, but then instinct took over. They turned around and saw the man was already running back up the hill, and they followed. They weren't as young and fit as they used to be, and Justin's sprained ankle held them back. The other man soon fell out of view while the brothers ran up the hill as fast as they could. So they could hear the alligator's heavy breathing and claws digging into the ground as it chased them. So then he knew they had to find a way to outsmart it, or they would be its next meal. At that moment, adrenaline was rushing through their bodies and had taken over. Their minds raced, trying to get away, but nothing came to mind. They reached the top of the hill and ran into the forest, the alligator's snapping jaw following behind. Right then, when all seemed lost, they heard a screaming at them. "Up here, come on!" So the brothers looked up at the tree before them and saw the man from earlier. It seemed like an impossible feat, but with no better option, the brothers decided to listen to the stranger. So the almost retired Derek climbed up the tree with the speed of a much younger man. And even Justin managed to get up the tree with his injured ankle, though he wouldn't have been able to without the other man's help. So they were safe for now, but got the problem of being stuck in a tree. Because down below, their enemy was still lurking. The alligator tried to follow the brothers up the tree, but its massive body was too heavy. It could only reach the lowest branches, snapping its jaws and hissing in frustration. So the brothers clung to the higher branches, panting and shaking with fear. "Thank you," Derek managed to get out between heavy breaths. "Don't mention it," the birdwatcher said. "Let's figure out how to get down." At first, the three men hoped they could scare the alligator away by themselves. But whatever they tried didn't work, and the alligator remained by the tree. So what now? Derek sighed hopelessly after trying to scare the alligator away by throwing a stick for the millionth time. Then a sudden gasp could be heard, and the brothers looked at the birdwatcher. "I've got my phone with me," he exclaimed. Due to all the thrill and danger, he completely forgot about all the stuff he brought with him. He had hung his backpack on a branch above him when he helped Justin up the tree. So the birdwatcher quickly grabbed his bag and rummaged through it. When he found his phone, he called the local ranger and asked for help. Now all they needed to do was wait for help. So they thought. As they waited for help to arrive, the men finally had a moment to catch their breath and reflect on the day's events. It suddenly started to make sense why they hadn't caught any fish, and the tall grasses rustling was also explained. So they certainly hadn't experienced such a situation before, but something seemed off as they went over it in their mind. "Why did the alligator attack us?" Justin said, voicing his troubled thoughts. Derek looked at his brother and realized what he was thinking. Now they finally had time to clear their head. It was apparent that something was wrong. An alligator doesn't usually attack humans unless provoked or in danger. But the brothers were just fishing, so why did it attack indeed? The brothers looked down from their perch in the tree and contemplated Justin's question. So at the moment they did, it all became clear. The brothers peered down at the alligator, who was slowly crouching around. "Look if you see anything unusual," Justin said when he saw the birdwatcher asked what they were doing. But right after, Derek suddenly exclaimed, the alligator was wounded. It had a metallic strap around his hind leg and tails, and that's why it was so aggressive. And it was probably also why they managed to get away as the wounds slowed it down. The situation just became even more weird as it took an unexpected turn with the discovery of the alligator's injury. What was the metallic strap and how did it get there? So the three men discussed the possibilities, but finding the truth from up in the tree was impossible. And then the birdwatcher thinks about his camera. It was a long shot, but perhaps it caught something he couldn't see with his eyes for a second time. The brothers watched the birdwatcher rummage in his bag for a second time and retrieve a camera. The screen lit up his face in the dark and showed a surprised expression. "It captured a video," he said. The man looked at the footage and saw himself run down the hill to warn the brothers. "Nothing much, just us running," he said as he handed it to the brothers. But they saw something else. As the brothers watched the footage closely, they noticed a small, shiny object falling off the alligator during the chase. It appeared suddenly, glinting in the fading sunlight before disappearing into the tall grass. So the object's brief appearance sparked their curiosity. Could that be related to the metallic strap? Derek wondered aloud, and Justin joined in. The situation kept developing and piqued their interest. There was definitely something weird going on. The brothers thought aloud, and the birdwatcher also chimed in, but it was interrupted when their discussion reached its peak. First, they noticed the swaying headlights, but soon after, they heard the snapping of branches under the car's weight. Help had finally arrived. The ranger slowly approached with his sub, making sure the alligator was well in sight, and eventually got out of his car to examine the peculiar situation. The ranger quickly realized there was no option but to tranquilize the massive alligator. It was the only way to ensure everyone's safety. Once the alligator was no longer a threat, Justin, Derek, and the birdwatcher could finally leave their hiding place and return to the ground. However, they didn't get a nice and warm welcome. To their surprise, the ranger was furious with them, but it didn't take long for them to know why. Once the alligator was tranquilized, the ranger inspected it and was furious to find it harmed. He suspected the men in the tree had something to do with it and intended to arrest them. However, the brothers and the birdwatcher protested and quickly showed him the footage. The ranger watched the video with great interest and was baffled by the men's story. He quickly realized they were innocent and were actually victims. After the misunderstanding was cleared up, Justin, Derek, and the birdwatcher explained their thoughts to the ranger, who was quick to agree. Something wrong was definitely going on around here. But he had to find out what exactly, and these men could help him. When he asked if the others could lead him to the hill, they were eager to help. So not much later, the group ventured back, determined to find the shiny object. However, once the group arrived back at the hill, the sun was already gone and fully dark. Luckily, both the ranger and the birdwatcher had some flashlights with them. They scored the ground in pairs when the brothers suddenly pierced the silence. "What's that?" The others quickly joined them, and the group is shocked to find a snare lying in the grass. "Someone is trying to trap the animals," the birdwatcher whispered. The group was shocked to discover a snare trap, understanding the gravity of such illegal activity in the nature reserve, so this couldn't be allowed to continue, posing a threat to wildlife and safety. Realizing the urgency, they contacted the police, and once officers arrived, they briefed them on the situation. The authorities took immediate action, promising to investigate further to protect the reserve and its inhabitants from any further harm. The group was eager to assist the police in their investigation. They felt a sense of responsibility for the situation and wanted to contribute to keeping the nature reserve safe for the wildlife it sheltered. However, the police clarified that it was far too dangerous for civilians to be involved in the reserve after dark, emphasizing the risks posed by wildlife and potential criminals. But the group didn't give up so easily. The group accepted that they couldn't do anything that night. But the first thing the following morning, Justin and Derek destined to go to the police station to check on the investigations. They were surprised to find the birdwatcher already there talking to a police officer. The brothers joined in on the conversation and were surprised to hear that the police hadn't gotten far with their investigation yet. What prevented them? The officer explained that the police force was having difficulty navigating the dense and complex terrain at the nature reserve at night, and hoped to make solid progress today. The three men instantly got an idea. For they understood the urgency of the situation, so Justin, Derek, and the birdwatcher offered their expertise and familiarity with the area to assist. So the police deliberated about it for a second and then accepted their help. So early in the morning, Justin, Derek, and the birdwatcher joined the police as they returned to the nature reserve early in the morning to begin their investigation. So they started at the fishing spot where the brothers encountered the wounded alligator for the first time and carefully combed through the tall grass in the area. The brothers' puffs and groans were the only noises in the silent morning until an officer suddenly exclaimed. So the search party quickly gathered around the officer, who shouted and was shocked to see multiple traps and snares ready and armed, lying in the tall grass. So the alligator chasing the brothers had been giant, so it managed to avoid being trapped. It signaled not only the danger the brothers had been in, but also the danger the nature reserve was in, as there appeared to be an organized trapping operation happening under their noses. The find was a shock to everyone. While the police gathered the evidence, the brothers and birdwatchers discussed the situation. Who would have thought this was happening? Derek said, and the others nodded. Then they noticed the rangers approaching. The ranger explained he had been patrolling the nature reserve, looking for signs of activity. So the brothers brought him up to speed, and at the mention of the snares, the ranger rushed toward the police officers. The others quickly followed the ranger and watched him inspect the traps and snares they found. He grabbed one of them carefully and told the police he recognized it. The ranger explained to the group that this particular snare was not just any trap, it was equipped with GPS technology and an alarm system. This meant that whoever set it up would be instantly notified the moment it was activated. It fell silent after the ranger stopped his explanation. Everyone was weighing his words and realized their potential with these snares. Instead of putting all their time and effort into searching for the trappers, they could use these traps to lure the criminals. They could catch them red-handed. Everything moved quickly after that as the group started crafting the perfect plan to trick the trappers into revealing themselves swiftly and safely. So while the police carefully placed the traps and snares back like they were before, Justin and Derek scoured the nearby area for young Tustin, so their goal was simple yet creative, to construct a convincing fake alligator. They gathered branches, leaves, and anything they could find to make something that looked like an alligator from a distance, because the trappers needed to think they had caught something so the police could catch them in the act. It took the brothers quite some time to build the alligator decoy, and they eventually needed help from the bird watcher with the finishing touches. Finally, after ensuring their decoy was convincing enough, Justin, Derek, and the police carefully positioned it on the snare, egging the trap. It was a tense and exciting moment, as there was no going back from that moment. Their plan was literally and figuratively sprung into action. The moment the trap was activated, the police instructed everyone to go to their respective places. Beforehand, they had agreed upon the perimeter. A small party would remain to catch the trappers in the act, while most officers would set up a large perimeter to notify them of any movement. The day passed and the anticipation grew, but there was no sign of the criminals. But the group was determined and waited patiently. Then dusk fell and still nothing was heard or seen. The group became restless after hours of waiting and sitting silently. But then an officer at the edge of the perimeter yelled in. "There is movement here," he called, and a surge of energy went over the party. With newfound hope, they scanned the dimming landscape for any movement. Anticipation ran high as they hoped to see the trappers appear soon. To the officer who reported it was only a few minutes away, so the group peered through the darkness while holding their breath. So then they saw it. Barely visible, they saw a couple of figures moving through in the dark and heading straight for the tall grass where decoy and snouty high hidden. It was clear to everyone watching from their concealed positions, these must be the trappers they had been waiting for all day. The officer in charge ordered the perimeter to close while the nearer party silently and stealthily made their way toward the trappers. The brothers breathed heavily as their hearts pounded in their chests. So they knew what was coming next, but still felt nervous and anxious. The group could now hear the whispers of the trappers, so they didn't suspect anything, and then on the officer's signal, everyone clicked their flashlights and aimed them at the trappers. So the dark night was suddenly ablaze with light. "Hold it right there, don't move, and put your hands up," the officer shouted over the startled screams of the trappers. In the center of it all stood a group of 3 surprised individuals, frantically looking around with their hands up. The surprise and terror were visible on their face. Where did all these people come from, was the question in their mind. They were caught red-handed. When the police confronted the trio and asked them what they were doing at the nature reserve at night, they stumbled over their words and couldn't give a coherent explanation for their presence. So that was enough for the police, as it gave them the ideal opportunity to arrest the men and transport them to the station for further questioning. And once there, the dark activities of the trio would soon come to light. So the men refused to talk once they were interrogated, but that wouldn't matter in the end, because the police were quickly able to gather the personal information of the trappers. And once the home addresses were known, several officers visited them and searched the premises. There they discovered a grim scene, animals trapped in cages, several stuffed animals, and all kinds of animal skins, revealing a long history of illegal trapping and poaching activities. The brothers and birdwatchers were delighted to see the scene unfold before them. Even to them, it was obvious this case was done and dusted. The police had gathered evidence from the wounded alligator in the place of the crime, and they caught the criminals red-handed. Furthermore, the findings at the homes of the trappers made the case even more solid, and they were put behind bars after a swift trial. After the trial was completed, Justin, Derek, the birdwatcher, and the ranger were invited back to the police station. There, the police force extended their gratitude toward them. Without their help, the trappers could have continued their operation for just how long, and they played a crucial in the crucial part in the arrest. The group accepted the gratitude but was just glad to have helped restore the safety and peace of the nature reserve. Before the brothers could leave the station, the birdwatcher approached them. "I have something for you guys," he said as he handed over a flash drive. It contained the footage of them running away from the alligator, a reminder of this incredible story and adventure they survived. They thanked the birdwatcher for this gift and rewatched the footage with broad spots. They were home. They had been taught a hard lesson. Inspired by their ordeal and the successful capture of the trappers, Justin and Derek decided to share their story and the footage with the media, so the tale of their harrowing experience, combined with dramatic footage, quickly went viral. So they hoped that by sharing their story, they would not only entertain, but also educate the public on the dangers and responsibilities of outdoor activities, turning their mistakes into lessons for others.